My son called me a burden. Not to my face, never that bold. But walls hear what hearts try to hide. Alright, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. My name is Elaine. I'm 63 years old. I've been a mother longer than I've been anything else. A wife, once. A woman who once painted light into every canvas she touched, until life taught me how to put down the brush and pick up responsibility instead. I built this house with grief in my chest and love in my hands. I gave up gallery dreams for grocery lists. And I never asked for much, not even thanks. But the day I heard my son call me a burden, that was the day I remembered something I had forgotten for far too long. This life still belongs to me. I raised him alone. I fed him before myself, clothed him while my shoes had holes. Built a home from the ashes of loss. And now? Now, he waits for me to die, so he can finally breathe. They think this house is theirs. But this house remembers. It remembers the woman who scrubbed floors at midnight, cried into unpaid bills, and painted over heartbreak with hope. So when I heard what he said, I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I made one quiet decision. To vanish. And to take the house with me. I wake up in the same bed I've slept in for over 20 years. The springs groan under me like they're tired too. The room is quiet, familiar, filled with the kind of stillness only memory can create. Light spills through the lace curtains I stitched myself after Henry died. I remember doing it just to keep my hands busy, just to stop them from shaking. I walk down the hallway, barefoot on the wooden floor that's been worn smooth by years of footsteps, mine, Daniel's, Henry's. Some mornings I swear I can still hear them. The walls are lined with photos. Daniel as a baby, Daniel with a graduation cap, Daniel grinning beside the dog we had to put down. And Henry, always Henry. His smile never changed, even in black and white. The house smells like toast someone else made. I enter the kitchen and Jenna's already there, humming while she pours almond milk into her smoothie. She barely looks at me. Daniel's on his phone in the other room. The baby is watching cartoons, laughing, calling out to no one in particular. I make myself tea in the mug that says "World's Best Mom." The words are faded now. The handle is chipped. I still use it every morning. I sit by the window. The garden is overgrown. The lavender is trying its best, but the weeds are winning. Jenna said she didn't like the smell. Asked if we could rip it out last spring. I pretended not to hear her. They rearranged the living room a few weeks ago. My favorite chair ended up in the garage. I dragged it back in. A few days later, it disappeared again, this time to the curb. I didn't ask. They didn't offer. I just stood there, looking at the empty corner where it used to be. I know the difference between being part of a home and being tolerated in a house. Once, Daniel used to run down these hallways barefoot, yelling for me to watch him jump, draw, dance, fly. Now he passes me in silence. Jenna is always polite. Pleasant. Efficient. She folds towels I already folded, moves my things into cabinets I didn't choose. I feel like a guest who's overstayed her welcome. This house was mine. I built it out of grief and grit after Henry died. It held me up when I had nothing else. Every brick was a decision. Every wall, a sacrifice. Now, I keep my voice low. My steps light. My presence, minimal. But lately, something in me has been stirring. Something old. Something sharp. Maybe it's the way they stopped asking before changing things. Maybe it's the way Daniel no longer says goodnight. Maybe it's the way they look at me when they think I'm not looking. I don't know what it is yet. But I feel it. And I don't think it's going away. I wanted to be a painter once. Not a hobbyist. Not a weekend watercolor dabbler. A real artist. New York loft, canvases taller than me, paint under my fingernails kind of dream. I had a scholarship lined up. Letters from galleries. I even got into a summer program in Paris. But then Henry and I found out we were pregnant. And just like that, dreams turned into decisions. He promised we'd find a way. But cancer doesn't make promises, it breaks them. 3 years after Daniel was born, I became a widow with a toddler and a funeral bill no one knew how to pay. I still remember sitting on the kitchen floor, this same kitchen, crying because I couldn't afford both diapers and groceries that week. So I chose diapers. And made soup from whatever was in the pantry. I took a night job at a diner. Day job at a school cafeteria. I came home smelling like fryer oil and sour milk. Daniel never seemed to mind. He'd run to me, arms outstretched, face lit up like I was the best part of his whole world. I remember one night, I was so tired I fell asleep still wearing my shoes. When I woke up, Daniel had covered me with his superhero blanket. He was 5. And he whispered, "I'll take care of you when I'm big, Mama. I promise." I held on to that. 4 years. It became the thing I told myself when the sacrifices piled up like unpaid bills. I gave up my 20s. My art. My sleep. Myself. I sold my easel to buy him braces. I skipped vacations so he could go on school trips. I canceled a gallery opportunity the same week he needed money for textbooks. Every single time, I told myself, this is what mothers do. And I did it with open hands. Not because I had to. But because I loved him that much. Now he walks past me like I'm a chore. He calls me Ma in the same tone he uses for broken light bulbs and flat tires. And I wonder if he remembers any of it. All that weight I carried, quietly, willingly. Did it just disappear the moment he no longer needed me to lift it? Because I still feel it. In my back. In my bones. In the space between who I was, and who I had to become. It was a Tuesday. Late afternoon. The kind of day where everything feels painfully, deceptively normal. The baby's toys were scattered across the floor. A cartoon played quietly in the background, something cheerful and high-pitched. Jenna had left the baby's clothes on the line too long again. They smelled like damp leaves and sun that had cooled too fast. I didn't say anything. I just brought them in. Folded them carefully, like I always do. The laundry basket was heavier than usual, or maybe I was just tired. My knees ached. My hands ached. Everything ached. As I passed the hallway on my way in, I heard Daniel's voice. Firm. Sharp around the edges. Not the sun tone. The one he uses when he thinks no one's listening. I paused. Not to eavesdrop. Not out of suspicion. It was instinct. Muscle memory. A mother's intuition that something was being said she wasn't meant to hear. She's a burden. 3 words. Soft, but final. The kind of truth people usually hide behind closed doors, spoken out loud like it was just a fact. I didn't gasp. Didn't drop the laundry. Didn't cry. I just stopped moving. She's a burden. Once the house is in our name, we'll be free. Our name. Free. Like I was a prison sentence. Like they were counting down the days until I disappeared. I looked down and realized I was holding a yellow onesie in my hands. Tiny, warm, still a little damp. My fingers gripped it so tightly the fabric wrinkled in my palm. Then Jenna's voice, bright and breezy, the way people sound when they talk logistics, not lives. She won't even notice. She's barely there anymore. Barely there. I had never felt more present. More awake. more painfully real in my own skin. I wanted to walk in. Look them in the eye. Ask them what exactly I had become. But my body wouldn't let me. My feet stayed rooted to the floor. My mouth didn't open. My heart just pounded. Loud, useless, betrayed. And the worst part? They weren't angry. They weren't struggling. They sounded like people who'd finally made a hard but necessary decision. Like unburdening themselves was the kindest thing they could do. I backed away, careful not to let the floorboards creak. The basket was still in my arms when I got to my room. I don't remember setting it down. I just remember sitting on the edge of the bed, hands in my lap, staring at nothing. No one knocked on my door. No one checked to see where I had gone. They just kept talking, planning, dreaming of a life that no longer included me. She's a burden. That was the sentence. The one that split something in me open. The one that made everything quiet. All these years, I thought I was the thread holding this family together. Turns out, I was just in the way. Dinner used to mean something. It used to be noisy. Messy. Laughter tangled with clinking silverware and stories that spilled over each other. It was where the day unraveled, in comfort, in questions, in care. Now it's mechanical. Predictable. And cold. The dining room was lit by that soft overhead fixture Daniel installed 2 summers ago. Jenna says it's more modern than the old chandelier. To me, it just feels too bright and too dim at the same time. The table was set, neatly, without fuss. The baby was already in his high chair, banging his spoon rhythmically against the plastic tray. Jenna moved with practiced calm, scooping mashed potatoes onto plates. Daniel scrolled through his phone, one arm on the back of the chair, as if nothing in this room required his full attention. I sat down last. At the end of the table, not quite next to anyone. Not quite across either. Just there. I asked Daniel how his day was. He said, fine. One syllable. No inflection. No eye contact. Jenna commented on a package arriving. Something for the baby. She didn't look up either. I nodded. No one nodded back. The only one who seemed aware of me was the baby, who dropped his spoon and squealed with glee when I picked it up. I handed it back with a smile. No one else noticed. Jenna spoke again, quietly. Did you remember to bring in the mail, Elaine? Her voice was flat but polite. Like I was a tenant doing a favor. I did, I said. Thanks. That was it. Not, how was your day? Not, are you feeling okay? Just thanks, like a receipt at the end of a transaction. I looked down at my plate. The food was fine. Warm. Well made. I couldn't taste it. Daniel cut his chicken into neat pieces, eyes still flicking down to his phone. I watched his hands, strong, capable, distant. And I remembered those same hands when they were 5 years old. Sticky with juice, tugging at my apron, showing me a crayon drawing of us flying through the sky. You're my superhero, Mom. That's what he had written. Now he barely acknowledged my existence. He didn't need to say it. He had already said it earlier, with words sharp enough to splinter bone. She's a burden. Once the house is in our name, we'll be free. I swallowed hard. Not food. Not drink. Just silence. The kind that fills you up like cement. The baby laughed at something only he understood. I smiled again. Reflex. But it didn't reach the part of me that used to feel full at this table. The part of me that once believed I'd always have a seat here. That my place in this family was permanent. And as I sat there, chewing slowly, the truth settled in my chest like a cold stone. This wasn't my table anymore. This wasn't my family, not in the way it used to be. I hadn't been asked to leave. But I had clearly already left. Not through the front door. but inch by inch. Over years. Until now, all that remained was the echo of someone who used to matter here. I cleared my plate quietly. Put it in the dishwasher. Sat back down. And said nothing. Because the version of me who once belonged here? She was gone. And the version that remained? They didn't see her. Not really. Not anymore. I didn't sleep much after that night. I kept hearing it, his voice, low and sharp. She's a burden. Once the house is in our name. Ours. Like I was already gone. I pulled out the deed from the file box under my bed. It still smelled faintly like cedar and thyme. My handwriting was on the envelope. Neat. Careful. The way I used to sign school forms, doctor's notes, mortgage papers, every dotted line I filled out so Daniel wouldn't have to. I stared at the names on the document. Mine and his. Years ago, I added him to the deed. It was supposed to be a gesture of trust. Security for his future. Proof that this home would always be his. I never imagined he'd use it to push me out. But something made me pause. A small line near the bottom, a clause I barely remembered. So I made an appointment. Quietly. A lawyer downtown. Wore my good coat. Brought a copy of the deed in a manila folder that felt too thin to hold something so heavy. She read it twice. Looked up at me. Do you realize, she said, you still retain primary ownership under survivorship rights and sole financial liability? I blinked. She repeated herself. Slower. You can sell the house without his consent. Legally, it's yours. Just like that, the floor stopped shaking. Not because everything was okay. But because suddenly, I had a choice. I could stay in this house and disappear 1 inch at a time. Or I could take back what I built. What I bled for. What I made into a home when the world gave me nothing but loss. I left her office feeling taller. Not lighter, no, not yet. But taller. For the first time in years, I didn't walk like I owed anyone anything. I walked like the deed said my name. Because it did. And now, so would the next chapter. It started with a cardboard box in the back of the hall closet. The one I hadn't touched in years. Taped shut, dusty, buried beneath winter coats no one wears anymore. Inside. A sketchbook with a cracked spine. Dried up tubes of paint, lids fused tight. Charcoal pencils worn to stubs. And one tiny folded note in Henry's handwriting, don't forget who you were before life got in the way. I stared at that box like it was something sacred. Like a version of me had been sleeping inside it all this time, waiting. That night, when the house was quiet, I carried it out to the garage. The light above the workbench flickered when I turned it on. The air smelled like rust and old fertilizer. And yet, something about it felt right. I cleared a space. Brushed away cobwebs. Found an old stool. Taped paper to the wooden table like I used to when Daniel was little and I'd sketch while he napped on the couch. At first, my hands didn't remember. The lines came out jagged. Uncertain. But then, something clicked, shapes began to form. A woman, bent but not broken. A house, heavy on her shoulders. Roots growing from her feet into the ground below. I wasn't just drawing. I was remembering. Every stroke felt like a small rebellion. A whispered no to the years I stayed silent. A quiet yes to the girl I used to be, buried under bills and birthdays and broken promises. I stayed out there until after midnight. Paint-stained fingers. Tired eyes. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't invisible. I was creating again. Not for Daniel. Not for Jenna. Not for anyone else. Just for me. And in that dark, dusty garage, I reclaimed something they never even thought to steal. Myself. It's strange, the things that come back to you when your hands are busy. In that garage, with charcoal dust on my skin and music humming low from an old radio, I started to remember her. The girl I used to be. She had wild hair and paint-stained jeans. She believed in gallery lights and city skylines. She thought grief was something that happened to other people. She didn't know yet what it meant to trade every part of yourself for someone else's survival. I saw her in flashes, barefoot on a rooftop in Brooklyn, sipping cheap coffee, sketching strangers in the park like they were mythic creatures. I saw her standing in front of Henry, 21 and in love, saying, "Let's build a life we never want to run from." And I saw her at 27, alone, stunned, holding a death certificate in one hand and a screaming toddler in the other. That was the day she disappeared. Not all at once. Piece by piece. First, the easel went into storage. Then the paints were packed away. Then the dream, quietly, respectfully, was folded and shelved under the title, "Not now." Maybe later. But later never came. There were lunches to pack. Bills to pay. Homework to check. Jobs to hold down. A son to raise. And for a while, I didn't miss her. 'Cause I was too busy surviving. But now that the house is full of silence and sideways glances, now that Daniel looks through me like I'm furniture, I can feel her standing behind me again. She doesn't blame me for what I gave up. She just wants me to remember that I once had a name before Mom. That I once had a voice before I softened it for everyone else's comfort. And in that garage, with nothing but a pencil and paper, she whispered, "It's not too late." And for the first time in decades, I believed her. I didn't start a war. There were no slammed doors, no screaming matches, no ultimatums. I just stopped. Stopped folding their laundry. Stopped restocking almond milk I don't drink. Stopped picking up toys after midnight like some invisible maid. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. I started cooking for one. Small meals. Simple ones. Toast with jam. Eggs the way I like them, soft, not scrambled. I ate at the window, alone, in the sunlight, and I didn't feel sad about it. I let the dishwasher run half empty. I left their coats on the back of the chair instead of hanging them up. Little things. Things that said, "This part of me? You don't own it anymore." Jenna noticed first. She asked if I was feeling okay. I smiled and said, "I'm just resting." Daniel didn't notice at all. That hurt more than I'd like to admit. But it also made things easier. I began spending more time outside the house. The library. A quiet bench near the lake. An old art supply store with creaky floors and soft jazz playing in the background. Sometimes, I'd just sit with my sketchbook open and let my hand move. No agenda. No deadline. No one needing anything from me. And in those quiet moments, I realized something. They had made a life inside my house. But I had forgotten to make one of my own. So I started building it. Not loudly. Not angrily. But deliberately. Like laying bricks in a foundation I'd almost forgotten how to pour. Because rebellion doesn't always come with fire. Sometimes, it's a whisper. A stillness. A refusal to disappear. I didn't go looking for a buyer. Not right away. At first, I just wanted to see if it was possible. To test the idea, like dipping a toe in the water before stepping off the shore. But once I knew I couldn't unknow it. I made some calls. Quiet ones. No for sale sign. No open houses. Just quiet inquiries, careful questions, and one visit, early morning, while Daniel and Jenna were out. They were a couple in their late 40s. Artists. No kids. They wore mismatched clothes and spoke softly, like people who spent more time listening than talking. Their names were Sam and Lena. When Lena stepped inside the house, she paused in the foyer like she could feel the weight of the walls. She didn't ask about granite countertops or square footage. She asked how long I'd lived here. I told her 22 years. She nodded and said, "You can feel that. The history. The care." We ended up talking for an hour. Not just about the house, but about painting, about loss, about starting over. They had lost a child 5 years ago. After that, they'd stopped painting. Just recently, Lena said, they had started again, slowly. Carefully. They weren't just buying a house. They were looking for somewhere to begin again. And so was I. When they left, Lena turned back at the door and said, "It feels like this house is ready to be held by someone who understands what it took to build it." I stood there, hands still, heart full, wondering how two strangers could see me more clearly in 1 hour than my own son had in years. I didn't say yes right away. But I didn't say no, either. And that silence between the two. It started to sound a lot like freedom. The letter came in the mail on a Thursday. Plain envelope. No warning. Just a single piece of paper with the buyer's name and a scheduled closing date. I left it on the kitchen counter, unopened, deliberately. I didn't have to say a word. I knew Daniel would find it. He did. That evening, the air in the house changed, charged, sharp, the way it does before a storm. I was in the living room, sketchbook on my lap, when he walked in holding the letter like it was burning his fingers. He didn't sit. He didn't even blink. "You're selling the house?" I looked at him, really looked. The man with his father's jaw but none of his softness. The boy I'd raised with stories and soup and lullabies. "Yes," I said. He stared at me like I'd just confessed to a crime. "You didn't even tell me?" "I didn't think you'd need much notice." "You've already made plans for after I'm gone." That hit him. I saw it, the flicker of shame in his eyes. But it disappeared just as quickly, buried under frustration. "You can't just do this," he said. "This house, this was supposed to be our future." "No," I said quietly. "This house was my past. And you've treated it like your entitlement." Jenna appeared in the doorway then, arms crossed, face tight. "Elaine, this affects all of us. Don't you think we deserve a conversation before you make decisions like this?" I set my sketchbook down. "I didn't get a conversation when you moved my chair to the curb. Or when you decided I didn't belong at my own dinner table. You made choices. So did I." Daniel's voice cracked a little. "You're being spiteful." "No," I said. "I'm being awake." They stood there, stunned. Not because I was angry, but because I wasn't. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just told the truth. For the first time in years. And it was louder than anything I'd ever screamed. I found the letter the night after the confrontation. I wasn't looking for it, wasn't even looking for anything at all. Just clearing out drawers, sorting through papers, trying to decide what to keep and what to leave behind. It was tucked inside an old sketchbook from the early years. The spine cracked as I opened it. Charcoal smudges, yellowed pages, a pressed flower I don't remember saving. And then, folded between two unfinished drawings, a small envelope. No stamp. Just my name on the front. Elaine. I knew that handwriting. I would have known it anywhere. It was Henry's. My hand shook a little opening it. Not because I was scared. But because I hadn't seen his words in so long. It felt like opening a door I thought had been sealed forever. The letter was short. No date. Just a few lines in his steady, looping script. "If you're reading this, it probably means things got heavy again. You always carry more than you should, Elle. If life ever makes you feel invisible, promise me you'll do one thing, start again. Whatever it takes. I'd want that for you. I'd want you free. Love always. H. I read it 3 times. Not because I didn't understand. But because I needed to believe it was meant for now. That even though he was gone, he still saw me. Still knew the shape of my heart. Even under the weight of all I had carried. I held that letter to my chest and cried, not out of sadness, but out of something quieter. Something gentler. Permission. He had given it to me. All those years ago. And somehow, I had finally heard him. I wasn't running away. I was honoring the part of me he loved most. The part that still believed in starting over. The house was quieter than usual that week. No one asked me what I was doing. No one offered to help. I think they all knew. This time, I wasn't bluffing. I started with the attic, boxes I hadn't opened in years. Baby clothes, faded cards, old bills, a shoebox of loose photos held together with a rubber band that snapped the moment I touched it. Each item was a memory. Each decision, to keep or let go, felt like closing a chapter. I didn't rush. I gave every room a moment. Daniel's old bedroom, still painted that soft blue he picked out when he was 10. I stood in the doorway and remembered sitting on the edge of that bed, holding him through nightmares, telling him everything would be okay, even when I didn't believe it myself. In the closet, I found the superhero cape he used to wear, red, frayed at the edges, still smelling faintly like crayon and peanut butter. I folded it gently and put it in my suitcase. Not for him. For me. Because once, he believed I could do anything. And maybe now, I finally do too. Downstairs, I boxed up the family albums and labeled them clearly, for Daniel. Let him decide what memories are worth keeping. I only took one photo with me and Henry, arms around each other, young, laughing, unaware of what life had planned. That picture was before the grief, before the weight. Before the sacrifice swallowed the artist whole. I looked around one last time. The floors I cleaned. The walls I painted. The silence I learned to live inside. There was no anger. No vengeance. Only space. And in that space, peace. I zipped my suitcase, walked to the front door, and paused. Not to look back. But to take a breath. Because the version of me who walked into this house decades ago. She was leaving with me. I left before sunrise. No note. No farewell speech. No dramatic final words. Just a packed suitcase, my sketchbook, a photo of Henry, and a folded letter that had waited 2 decades to be read. The house was still sleeping. Even the baby hadn't stirred. I stood in the foyer for a moment, bare feet on the hardwood floor one last time. The walls didn't speak. They didn't need to. We understood each other. This house was built with my hands. Held together by my resilience. And now, it would belong to someone who saw it not as inheritance, but as sanctuary. I walked through each room slowly. Not to grieve, but to release. Letting go doesn't always look like running. Sometimes, it looks like walking away without slamming the door. By the time Daniel came downstairs, I was already gone. By the time he noticed the silence, I was hours down the road, windows down, radio low, the morning wind curling through my hair like I was 20 again. No forwarding address. No destination I had to explain. Just the open road. And the weight of nothing on my shoulders. They thought they could outlast me. Wait me into fading. But I didn't disappear. I chose to vanish. And I took the house with me. Not the walls. Not the furniture. The real house. The part they never understood. The part made of sacrifice and soul and story. That was mine. And I took it back. I didn't know exactly where I was going. I just drove until the air felt different. It took 2 days to find it, a small coastal town where the streets are still lined with bookstores and fishermen wave to strangers. The kind of place where no one asks why you came, only if you'd like to stay a while. I rented a cottage with a chipped blue door and a wide window that looks out over the sea. The walls smell like old pine and salt. The kind of place that doesn't need fixing, only living in. The first night, I sat by the window and listened to the ocean. No televisions. No crying babies. No one walking past me like I wasn't there. Just waves. Endless, honest waves. The silence was unfamiliar at first, too clean, too still. But eventually, it stopped echoing loss. And started sounding like possibility. I unpacked slowly. Hung up only what mattered. A few clothes. My sketchbook. The photo of me and Henry. The letter. I found a little art shop downtown, run by a woman named Clara who reminds me of who I might have been if life had gone a different way. She gave me a shelf in the back, said I could paint there whenever I wanted. I didn't tell her my story. She didn't ask. But when I showed her one of my sketches, she looked at me and said, "You're not new to this. You're just back." I nodded. Because that's exactly what it felt like. I wasn't starting over. I was returning, to myself. And that, more than anything, felt like home. The cottage sits on a bluff, just beyond the edge of a small town that doesn't ask too many questions. It smells like salt and pine and something else, freedom, maybe. There's a wide window facing the ocean. I sit there most mornings with a cup of tea and a pencil in my hand. I don't draw houses anymore. I draw women. Women standing alone. Women holding flames. Women with tired eyes and unbreakable spines. The gallery downtown asked for my name. I gave them my initials, EM. Let the past wonder where I went. Every Sunday, I teach a small painting class at the community hall. Mostly older women. A few young mothers. Some have never held a brush before. I tell them what I had to learn the hard way. Make space for yourself, even if no one else does. In the evenings, I walk the shoreline. The wind tangles my hair. The tide erases my footsteps. And for once, I don't feel guilty about being alone. In the window of the cottage hangs my newest piece. A painting I finished last week. It's bold. It's painful. It's honest. A woman stands waist-deep in water. A house, weathered and cracked, resting on her back. And yet she stands tall. Not drowning. Not broken. Just, done carrying what was never hers to hold forever. I called it the weight I carried. Some houses are made of wood and brick. Others, of silence, sacrifice, and memory. I sold mine. And saved myself.